from his bedroom, but he's I would say at my suggestion and maybe others, I said, hey, try one of those virtual backgrounds. So he's actually coming from a pool. So we should immediately ask for a review of Matt's background, as he's just demonstrated. Though it's not a true green screen. So if you move too fast, you sort of, what would you call it? You pixelate out. You just kind of like
I like, you know, fade from time, like in Back to the Future. Like,
yeah,
you know,
you get like a little fading effect. So
I
I
gotta
don't
get my
know.
parents back together, or my background's
So
gonna take over.
we'll try to be good YouTubers. We'll say, like, if you like it, leave a comment, and if you prefer, I would say if you don't like it, I'd say if you prefer the other background, which is just Matt's what I guess laundry room, bedroom.
It's not a laundry room; it's a guest bedroom.
Guest bedroom. If you prefer Matt's
guest bedroom / office.
Well, for the record, you did just move laundry off the bed like 10 seconds ago. So
that's because I needed to make the bed.
I'm not into the / office situation, because you know what that becomes? / not an office.
It becomes, it's right. You know what the guest room becomes? It becomes the guest room. It's still just the guest room where everyone.
But you do what you got to do, right?
Well, my oldest is off at college, so now his bedroom has become my wife's / office, despite her having another office. So, I mean,
what's going on? You need to reclaim
the room on this side is another office. So, wait, do I live in an office complex?
It's offices all the way down.
What's the story? Why can you not reclaim one of these several offices as your own?
Well, this is the best room. Like, to be fair, it's
as in its biggest. I mean, it looks a little bit like a jail cell.
It's not that it's the biggest. It's big enough, but it's got ample space. It's right next to the internet drop, which is in the next room.
Oh, okay, that's a huge win.
I've got this nice blinds behind me covering up the I don't get direct light on my screen. Over on this side, I've got some French doors into like a sunroom office that the kids use as their room, as their office, and it gets a lot of direct light, and it's kind of cold in the winter. So like, and this room has a heat vent, so that's also a bonus.
So okay, let's review: internet, heat, direct light, and good, but with a good shade. Is that that's the summary?
Yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah. Right. Carpet, and the bed if I need a nap.
Yeah, if you're just like, hey, this call's going a little long, I need to just stretch out.
Gotta lay down
before the next.
I've got a nice chair in here. It's off camera holding laundry, but
and can you see the wallabies from the window there and stuff?
No, there's no windows. I mean, the window behind me looks at the next door.
That's what was wrong with my question. No window. Otherwise, yes.
Well, I mean, this window is like, it just opens up to the next door neighbor's side of their house, so it's not really that useful.
Okay.
And then
unless you want to look at them.
Yeah, on this side it's like frosted glass doors. So
okay.
I don't know. I like it. I get a modicum of privacy, and I don't know.
Excellent use of modicum.
All right. Well, good save, Matt Ray. Right. I think you've chosen the optimal room in your house to office.
Well, consider there are 4 offices. Yes, there are 4 / offices in this house. I think I'm winning.
And the great thing is, no matter which one you choose, you pay the same.
Well, and when I had COVID, this doubled as the sick room. So
well, you were on top. Now I don't know what's happening.
Well, I meant I could isolate. I had a bed and a computer. That's all I needed.
I wonder if that become like a housing need in the future, because I do think I did much the same. The guest room doubles as the COVID isolation room for everyone, where it's like, you're in
that's
the
a dark future.
Next,
maybe so instead of it's a 4-2 / safe room / COVID isolation room.
That's right. You just need like a dumb waiter or something to get food in and out, where you don't have to actually
a mail slot. Slide a pizza through the mail slot. Yeah.
Yeah, these are the architectural features of the next generation
of living in a post-apocalyptic times.
Yeah, it's
a COVID room, a dumb waiter, a safe room.
Quarantine quarters.
Yes,
I like it. Quarantine quarters. All right. Well, I remembered this week to actually put the message in Slack that we're streaming. So hopefully people who want to join us will at least have a chance that they'll know it, because last week I didn't. I just forgot. what it is. All right, Cote. Well, I think we're ready. Unless you got anything else.
Well, let me put a link in LinkedIn, the hot new social channel in this post Twitter era for professionals.
It's taking over the world. LinkedIn.
Yeah, I don't know where you're supposed to promote your stuff or hang out anymore. Because I don't know. I guess I have 1,000 followers in Mastodon, but like, I don't know, man. Am I using it right?
Isn't that
yes.
the new
Thanks for the reminder.
newsletter?
That's right. Yeah. That's how it works.
It kind of feels good though. I don't know. I feel like I've moved when I waste time. I've just moved all my like Twitter time to TikTok, right? I just feel like that's where I
guess that does feel good.
It's just always, you know, it's like, I don't know. It's just kind of a time suck. You're like, well,
that makes sense.
Like I'm exchanging my time sucks for other time sucks. It's like,
well, I mean, yes, of course. The correct answer would be like I'm doing something important.
I'm bettering myself.
I'm learning ancient Icelandic.
Although I do every once in a while I'll whip out the Duolingo for a few minutes, but then I'm just like, no, I want something more mindless. This is a little too much work for me.
Maybe I've got too much mindless.
I think anyone who thinks they have too much mindlessness doesn't have enough.
Just slide off into oblivion. It's like, if I could just be in a coma.
Yeah. Tell me if you need me to push you, I'll come if you push me back. All right.
Jeez, that got dark.
I'm
gonna push you off into that coma. Maybe I'll unplug you when you get there.
Oh, I just meant oblivion.
Oh, great.
Okay. Well, we can bring it down. Bring it back up. All right. I think I'm ready. All right, Matt Ray, you've lived in a, I don't know, more tropical than most places climate for a while. And what is your evolving position on coconut?
Whoa, coconut. I was not expecting that. You know, it's actually not that tropical here. I mean, that's like asking somebody in LA what they think about coconut.
I'm sure they have thoughts.
Well, sure. And they'll probably be stuck in traffic. But
wow.
I mean,
Quick joke there.
Coconut, it's fine.
Yeah.
I'm not I never caught the coconut water craze. I don't really use it too often. I mean, because like coconut flakes by themselves, there's a ton of sugar in there. So really, if you ever have like raw coconut, it's just kind of like, well, that's a lot of fiber.
I like to
Fiber and sugar.
My one word.
Yeah, the sugar's good.
Overrated. Just overrated. Coconut in general, just overrated. A lot more work. Yeah,
well,
a lot more work than it's actually worth.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean the coconut I like is like and a Mai Tai, which is really just a bunch of sugar.
Sure. Then it's just a garnish, right?
Yeah, I think you've hit on it, Brandon. You want coconut as a garnish or like a condiment, right?
Oh yeah, sure. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, I do enjoy here at the Albert Heijn. They do have they've got a little package of, what would you call it? It's like pre-shelled and pre-broken apart coconut pieces. Like it has a little bit of the brown barky stuff on the backside. But it's kind of like little bite-sized pieces, and you can just, as they say, pop them in your mouth and eat them. But and when I first moved here, like it was kind of like a fun novelty because they're in these little packs, these little round plastic things that are always like 3 for €6 or 3 for $5 or something. And that kind of pricing just totally works on me. They should look into this for enterprise software pricing, where like I just want the coconut thing, but I'm like, I could just pay €2 for this one thing, or I could pay €6 and get 2 more things, right? Like, and so I always end up getting like the hummus and maybe some other stuff.
Is there some sort of like exponential like you can get 1 for 4 or 2 for 5 or 3 for 7, 8 for 8 for 16, and then all of a sudden you're like approaching this if I just buy all of them, I'll get all of them for the same price. Yeah.
Oh, I think that's there must be a chart that shows the optimal. I don't know if this is a prisoner's dilemma or like some sort of like thinking fast, thinking slow thing, but there must be a graph that shows the optimal point between the consumer and the seller when it comes to like buy 3 for 5.
All of a sudden you're like, out of my way, Costco, I'm going direct.
because you're right. At some point, if it was like buy 6 trillion and get 10 trillion more. That might be bad for the sellers because then you would own everything.
Look at me. I bought all the bananas in Guatemala.
Because I got 5 million included. So I think there must be something there. But anyways, yeah. So they had these little containers, and I had the coconut pieces, and I still they were fun, but I still reflexively eat them. And every time I eat them, I'm like, oh, this is before flavor was invented. Like it's really I think they need to add the little
Chocolate.
like little lemon, maybe some salt and chili powder to it, like you'd get on a beach in Mexico.
Maybe some ice, some rum.
Is it filling though? Is it one of those things that just maybe it's not that tasty, but it fills you up and you're feeling
it is so filling.
Healthy?
Really?
I'll eat one of those and I'll be like, oh, I really wanted to have some chicken legs for dinner, but now I don't know. I mean, I'm going to eat them anyways, but it's not going to be as pleasurable as I thought it should be.
High fiber. I guess that's the question I'm asking. So is it high fiber filling? I don't know. I haven't eaten a lot of coconut to really know that, I guess.
Yeah.
Where do you stand on candied ginger?
Oh yeah, I like that a lot. I'm into that.
Me too, but some people can't stand it, and you buy it so they don't eat it, like my kids.
And then you eat it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is a problem with candy and sweets. I don't know. I mean, I don't know if this is a dad thing or a me thing, but I often wonder what if we didn't buy a whole bunch of sweets, and then I wouldn't have to worry about the kids eating too much sweets and everything. But I think that's not realistic. It's just part of life that they're going to want to eat sweets and do things like that. Talk about a chart. There's got to be a chart of optimal sweets eating, not necessarily for health and dentist satisfaction, but for just sort of ease of quality of life, right? As a parent,
well, and also there's depends on the quality of the candy you're eating.
That's true. How about candy corn?
Ooh.
See, I threw you a curveball there.
You did, because it's something you don't think about, but then when you get it, you're like, why haven't I been eating this? And then after you eat it, you're like, oh yeah, that's why I don't eat this, right?
Yeah. I think I would only modify one thing to say I think the people in my family constantly are thinking of candy corn. It's just it's always there, kind of whatever religion you have, your deity or deities, it's just always there on your shoulder.
Well, Sunday mornings for candy corn.
Remember me? Yeah. Well, speaking of things that are asking you if you remember them, do you remember developer productivity?
Oh yeah, I live it.
There's been I think it started last month when I'll use the old podcaster joke. Our friends over at McKinsey. We probably have at least one friend at McKinsey.
I'm sure you know somebody.
Yeah, probably so. I know I know there's one of our listeners works at Accenture and is way into AI and using it, which was fun to talk with them about. However, over at McKinsey, they wrote a report. I think maybe report is too strong of a word. They had a blog entry that you could download as a PDF, and I think this is maybe the second one after their Developer Velocity Index, the DVI. Which used to be a type of cable, if I remember.
I saw it in Legacy Conf.
Oh yes, that's something maybe we can go over in the short after show. Go over all the cables, the ports, FireWire, zip drives. However, they came out with one, and they were suggesting that. I mean, the whole premise was, of course, because you look at McKinsey, the other management consultants, their customers are the executives. Management, I think, in the Marxist term, where it's the capitalists who own the company and determine, they own the means of production or whatever, and so they kind of are reaping all the I don't know, some real Cory Doctorow enemies sort of situation. And the premise was that tracking software developer productivity always seems impossible, a bit of a opaque box, if you will. And they were like, actually, don't accept that. You can measure it. And so what they did is they combined together the Dora metrics and the space metrics, which, as I always like to mention, they should have named Spice. I'm sure you could come up with something that starts with an I that's the same as whatever it starts with an A. It'd be much cooler than space. It's less spacey, more spicy. That'll be the name of my metrics. And they added in 4 of their own metrics, which I should know because I read through this 3 or 4 times today. But these extra 4 metrics are basically tracking developer skills, competency, the developer contributions, which is, the activity, and as they say parenthetically, like in Jira or whatever, normalized for something or another. I think it's the developer velocity index or velocity developer index, whatever it may be, which is, and this is the thing that the management consultant group love to do, which maybe I'll parenthetically get to why, but they love to give you a benchmark comparing you against other people who are similar in your industry, other companies, other publicly traded companies usually. And so I think the DVI is relative to other companies, so you can see how normal, abnormal, how high performing you are. Very Dora sort of thinking there. Now, parenthetically, why do the big management consultant firms like to compare you to your cohorts? Because their whole thing, like back when Bain was founded, way back by those engineering people, I think splintered off of Goldman. I forget the exact history, but their whole deal was you hire us to increase your share price. And so you want to know where you are relative to your cohort for share price. So that's kind of like their whole basis of like, you only want to be so tall next to the other grass, and you want to have predictable returns so you don't surprise people or kind of inflate your valuation, then it goes down, blah, 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 right? So that's a good context to keep in mind for all this stuff. It's all about the almighty share price or shareholder value. And then I think maybe Brandon or Matt Ray, you remember, but I think the other index, I don't remember what the other metric they added was, but there were 4 different new metrics that they added. And this created a little bit in the developer, definitely in the newsletter world, in the agile world. I was reminded, if you remember, this might have been 10 years ago. Do you remember when Gartner came out with bimodal IT?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And it wasn't quite as as hefty as the backlash against bimodal IT, but it certainly felt like that, right? It had the same sort of like, oh, look at these jokers in dry clean shirts with their PDFs. They don't know what they're talking about. And then there were several, I read these a lot too, very, very kind of excellent critiques of the developer productivity additions that McKinsey was seeking to add here. And to summarize them, and I think these are things that we all know, but that need to be you got to tell people over and over again, is I think there's 3 things that I learned. One, when it comes to developer productivity, you're always supposed to measure the team and not the individual, which I think is true for most all metrics if they're applied to you. You never like, and I think the second one is that, of course, you would like to measure business outcomes or value, whatever term of art you want to use. You want to measure the impact or the effect. And I forget if that's with an E or an A. We should just fix that. Like, we don't need to have these 2 words that basically mean the same thing, except in like temporally different. It's very confusing. I'm not into that. Just let's go fix that. We'll call up Webster or whoever. And then the third thing is that, and this is the one that I think is often, I don't know, not objectionable, but like a little funny, is that like, well, management is going to misuse metrics and people are going to game the metrics, right? Which this last one is sort of like, why are we doing anything, right? Like,
I mean, the counter to all this does come off as very nihilistic. Like, you can't measure me. I defy your attempts to quantify, my existence. But I mean, there's some weight. You got to try something. I'm willing to throw McKinsey a bone on that. Like, you got to try something. But as as many people are going to point out, like, well, whatever you try, I'm going to game. Which, is that the right thing? Core Doctor would say, yeah, sure. But I don't know what the right answer is. I mean, I feel like, this is why engineering managers make the big bucks, right? They have to figure out how to take these unmanageable cats and get them, herded in the right direction. And they're the ones who generally are getting measured. And then they have to decide, well, how do I decide which developers are, pulling the most, or, are making the team better? And so then you get into like, well, there's a lot of On the developer side, developers talking to developers, they're aware of these outside. Some of them are aware that people are trying to figure out why what you're doing is so like hard to pay attention to, and people. That's why they make fun of Rockstar programmers, because they're like they're going in, they're trashing the place, and everyone sees a big show, but they don't realize that they left a big mess. And the 10x developer idea gets ridiculed because you can write a lot of code, but there's a lot more to being a good developer, than just writing code. It's those meetings, it's those explanations, it's spending time mentoring folks, writing documentation. And when developers talk to developers, they're like, that's what it means to be a good developer. And then when McKinsey shows up, they're like, that's hard to quantify. Could you just go back to writing code? And that's the tension.
And I think you've kind of made a good collage of the the best reason to object to this kind of stuff is the there's two things there, I think, in what you're saying. One is like, now there's one person, this guy Dan North, who wrote this up, and he made a good point that like actually probably for over 50 years we've been trying to measure developer productivity. We put a lot of thought into this, which is true. But I think even after that 50 years, it still is a little squishy at some point, right? Like,
well, it's pure thought works. I mean, it's pure just coming out of your head, which is always, it's like saying, Cote, give me the top 5 poets of all time.
Now here's this could derail into an area where I don't understand what's being said. But there are several sports references made in the rebuttals here.
Finally bringing Brandon back in.
and they raise the point that you have these 10x, they don't put it this way, but I'm rephrasing it. You have these 10x sports team players, but like, like this almost seems like a dangerous thing to bring up, is that you do have a very team-based sport, unless you're playing tennis or golf, I guess, where you have to have a lot of collaboration. You got a lot of variables going on. Who knows what's happening? But like, well, tell me if this statement is wrong, but is it objectively? Like, objectively, there are players on that team that are much more valuable and important than other players. And like, that can kind of like, not only can it be measured, but it is measured, like very, at least by market forces. And then also like numbers and shit. But like, I think that precision of measuring an individual's contribution to the team, the feel is, and we'll get to an exception that Dan North came up with that I think is actually a good whatever here. But measuring an individual's performance on a team of developers is difficult, or it's actually not difficult, but you can't let those fucking capitalists do it because they'll screw you over.
But I think maybe the whole thing though comes back to like, I guess this is like the most, fundamental question, is just sort of like this idea that like the game metaphor and the implication that there's sort of like a zero-sum game, because if we're playing a game, well, I'm gonna, manipulate the metrics. And it's sort of like, well, at the end, we're just working together to try to build something towards a common goal. And like, I don't know, like the need to measure every conceivable thing here in itself maybe gets in the way of ultimately like achieving that goal. You know what I mean? So it's like, if you're close to like building something and you're like and if you're like, an executive and building this piece of software is important to you, it's sort of like you're involved. Do you know what I mean? Like you're kind of watching, so you go back to the sports metaphor, like if you're the coach and you're like watching the game, I could see like, maybe I'm watching the game. I see like Matt, twists his ankle, right? But I literally saw it and I'm like, oh, Matt's not playing that well, but like, I know exactly why. Right. And it's not like, we still need a person in that position. Right. And I'm satisfied that like, in this case, Matt's ankle will heal or something like that. So it's sort of like, it's like you can take in information by like seeing what's happening and make adjustments without having to kind of go to all of these different statistics. Like you were kind of mentioning some of the ones that McKinsey wrote. And just to recap them, it's like inner outer loop time spent. It's like, it doesn't really matter, like in the sense of like, if someone's just like, I got to work more on the outer loop because it needs to get fixed, like, that's fine. Like, I don't need to like penalize you for that. Or contribution analysis. It's like, that one is like super hard. I'm not even totally sure what that means, but like, if, especially when you see a senior developer is sort of like helping other people like get over blockers or, address issues or get through a complicated thing, like very valuable. Right. But they maybe their time on keyboard is pretty low because they were just like helping someone with something really, really hard. Right. And then, like talent capability store is another one. It's like, I don't know. I don't want someone like out just learning like the new popular programming language and not like, you know what I mean? Not implementing the thing. Sometimes it's better to be like, no, just use the talent you have. Like, let's like knock out this HTML and this YAML and all this stuff that's got to get done. So I don't know. I guess it's just my whole point of all of that is just sort of like, the idea that you're detached and you don't really see what's going on, to me is maybe like the whole problem with this. And it strikes me as like, this is sort of like how management consultants manage themselves because they're on a bunch of projects where lots of people don't know what's going on. Whereas like if we were building a piece of software and I was an executive, I would either have an executive who's heavily involved that kind of knows what's going on, or I would be involved if it truly is important to my, my corporation.
Yeah. I think you bring up the other area that I think the, this whole situation evokes in a good way, which is, if management doesn't know how software works, then that's kind of fucked, right? Like,
well, that's why
if
startups don't hire McKinsey, right? Because they're small enough to be involved.
Right,
and the folks who do hire them are the ones who have layers and layers of sub managers between them and the coalface, and so you hire somebody like this to tell you what you should know. Like, well, if you want to know more about what's going on, you have to be involved. And you can't do that at a certain size organization. And so McKinsey's saying, well, here's ways that you can, squeeze out more, here's how do you get better reporting out of your minions. And, there's always going to be a level of information loss and filtering. Maybe McKinsey's onto something, maybe they're not, but what you're going to end up with is like a game of telephone and yes men as you work your way up to the top. So keep your company smaller. How's that sound?
So this brings up, as I was reading through all this stuff over and over again to make sure that I kind of understood, or at least thought I understood what was going on. The little Brandon in my head was piping up and thinking and saying things like, well, I mean, at Google, do you think everyone is like a great developer? No, they just make a lot of money, so it's fine, right? Like in the sense of like being well, we could use another sports metaphor. Is it success is the best deodorant? that like if you if everything is going well and you have good business outcomes, then like sure, you can hunt around for like slackers, I guess. I mean, even my diction there is indicating the problem with individual analysis. Or also you could be like, things are fine, I guess we're doing a good job, right? Like if you can actually rate, if you can actually connect to an outcome, if you will, if the business is being successful to some extent, you don't really need to question your developer productivity because obviously it's ample.
Well, right, which is why people get really riled up about things like stack ranking, because they're like, you're just looking for a reason to cut people. I mean, the assumption being that there must be some percentage of people who are not good at their jobs, and that's the real objection to like stacked ranking is well, if I'm not doing the things that are highly visible, I'm going to get put on the bottom. But but if you spend all your time doing things that are highly visible, you leave a lot of technical debt behind you and problems for the next person to clean up, which I don't know. That's why resume driven development is a thing. I
think the stack ranking you hit on like a good thing is like, I feel like in some ways, like it's fine if we just kind of all acknowledge that like, hey, like some level of stack ranking is going to go on no matter what you say.
Oh yeah, it is.
And it's just like, And if you just kind of say like, it's always subjective, right? I mean, this is the whole thing I always say. It's like any type of stack ranking has a lot of subjectiveness to it. And it's like, you know, sometimes in your career, you'll be on top and sometimes you'll be at the bottom. And most of the time you'll probably be in the middle. And that's why I think kind of like, I was just sort of like terming all of this, all reports like this, sort of like I'm calling them like these productivity playbooks, right? It's like, I think, you know, just people that find themselves in executive positions are just bombarded with this kind of stuff. Like, you need to be more productive. You need to be managing your team. You need to be, and it's like, part of me gets it, but another part of me is always like, it's all like a distraction, much like I think we talked about, like, you know, the slides Benedict last week, which are like these industry market overviews, which are really interesting. But at the end of the day, what's really going to drive success is like, are you building something that solves a problem in a compelling way that people want? Like, that to me is the magic. And all these things, like all these questions outside of that, are sort of distractions. Like, yes, someone can say there's this great market for Kubernetes, but if you don't have the right product that's helping in that world, then it's not going to help you. And the same thing, we all know it. Like, you can have a highly successful engineering team that's like doing everything right and building the absolute wrong thing. And so it's like, to me, it comes back to, if you're the executive, it's like, you've got to be figuring out the answers to those other questions. And the reason we don't see, you know, people put out like the answer to that is like, that is a very, very difficult question. Finding product market fit is like, there is no magic bullet or way to do it. And that's why it's so hard. And I think because it's so hard, people sort of like retreat to these like very well-known, very well-written, you know, reports that sort of like, if you will, almost like pretend that you have all the answers.
You know, it would be a fun report. This is something I think some management consulting firm could do with some, you know, our mythical summer interns. But like, let's see, it's of course going to be a 2x2, but you want to do a study of, let's call it one of the axes is almost magicness of the industry, which is a way of sort of like quantifying how difficult and complicated it is. Like somewhere in the middle of magicness is maybe software development. And then on the extreme, and then after that is probably like pharmaceutical and genomic research. And then beyond that is like cold fusion or something.
I think,
right?
yeah,
Like,
you can say like music, right? Or like,
okay, yeah,
I mean, how do you write a hit song? It's like, I mean,
that's
here
good.
Like thousands of years, and it's still like, I don't know.
That's true. Like that's good. Also, you would have that on there. Like tonight, we watched like I'm a Teenage Kraken from like what is it? You know, the studio that brought Shrek, right? And then you just watch that movie, and you're like, well, this is obviously crap compared to any Disney movie, right? Like even compared to like, you know, Rapunzel, this movie is not good, right? Which is like kind of one of the, you know, not so great Rapunzel movies or Disney movies. And so obviously there is something incredibly complicated about how Disney like makes these really good kids movies versus like the Croods or whatever, right? And so like, so that's good, Brandon. Yeah, you've got this magicness, right? And then I think the other vector would be something like subject matter expertise of new CEO. And then so what you would want to track is when you get a new CEO and they go into a new company, like, do they need to be an expert in the magicness for it to be successful, or do they not have to be? Like, you know, I think one of the most famous ones is, well, back in the like 50s and the 60s, you would have these people from like, you know, who used to do like bombing run calculations for World War II, like go run Ford, or like, you know, go run whatever that aluminum company was. And they would just have like a very like simplistic approach to stuff. Or you would have the Pepsi guy go run Apple, and then that didn't work out really well, right? So it's like this question of like, in which industries do you actually have to know what you're doing? Like, and not know what you're doing as far as capital allocation, strategy, talking with the board, all of that kind of stuff. But like, actually like, oh yeah, I used to be on the line and make sure that we rejected the bad chickens and put the good chickens in the containers, right? Like,
I think a lot of this too, where it comes from, I think it comes from the world of manufacturing. So whatever, mid 1900s, 50s, 60s, where that's sort of like the idea of general management came up, was like, oh, there's a factory, and the factory, you kind of already know the factory produces something people want. And it's about, how can I get the factory to run more efficiently, less defects? And that's where I think a lot of, and even today, that metaphor you know, it's amazing when you stop and like listen how often like the factory metaphor is still used, right? Whereas, you know, like even sometimes we'll be like, oh, this is a music factory or whatever. And it's like, well, you know, there isn't like a group of people, although there are groups of people that come together to try to write music. It's not like there's like one good factory and you just hire a good general manager.
What about CNC Music Factory?
That's what I was thinking.
Well, there are exceptions.
Okay. And so where I was going with that is just sort of like, I think that mindset comes, you know, sort of started there. It's a very much a management consulting mindset, right? It's just like, we know where it is. And I think we see in software, the place we see applied, you know, rightfully or wrongfully, is private equity. That's sort of like taking over a well-known software business that does have a big set of customers, probably some type of large SaaS recurring revenue. And you're looking at like, how do I just make it more efficient? So probably applying something like these metrics at that level, kind of in that area.
Right.
Probably is reasonable, but it's just before that, right? If you're in the high growth kind of, you know, new emerging market, I think applying much of this is probably completely a waste of time, right? You probably just need to get in there with the team and see like what's going on.
Right. Okay. I think you know, you can always use a bubble chart to add to sneak in a third dimension without having to blow people's minds. So I think we're going to convert it to a bubble chart, and the size of the bubble, maybe the size of the bubble becomes the CEO's domain experience. We'll see. We can play around with it. But the third thing we want to measure in our chart is like the need to do something new, to like change. Because as you bring up, like, you know, for people like me, hopefully this isn't always the case, but like when you have like a PE firm that's like taking over a software company, you know, the cash cow strategy is like, let's change as little as possible and just like keep getting paid to do kind of as little as possible, right? And so like in that case, you can have more of a factory mentality, because people will be like, oh, we need to spend $5 million to get this innovative coder in here so that we can adopt to this new feature. And the CEO would be like, whoa. No, our job is not to adapt and do new things. It's to like keep people paying this money until they absolutely don't want to. Like, so we're not going to spend money on improving things. That was the whole deal here.
Right. I think it's worth calling out though, like you kind of were joking about cash cow, but that comes from a lot. I think, I don't know the original one, but BCG, that matrix, right? Rising star, cash cow, right? That comes from management consulting. So, and you know, what always happens, right, is like, you know, that chart is always so funny because it's like, well, cash cow, it's like, well, just keep doing what you're doing more productively, right? And it's like probably the easiest one, right? It's just like, fine, apply some of these metrics, you know, cut back a little bit, whatever, that's good. And then you get to like the thing that's completely failing. You're just like, stop doing that, which is like, okay, which is
kill the cow.
Like doctor. It's like, don't stop. That hurts. Stop doing that. Right. It's just the answer. But then the rising star, which is always the other one, is just where they just say like, invest. But that, you know, that's all that's ever given. Just invest in. It's like, well, invest in like,
in what?
What should? Yeah, that's the whole question. The question isn't like, should we invest? It's like, what part of this should we invest in it, and how does it go to being a rising star? Right. But every time I'm in those meetings, they just completely punt on that. They're just like, well, you should invest in that, and then people will say something like, all right, everyone send in your list of ideas how much revenue that thing will bring in. Well, if I knew that, you know, like if I could do that, I wouldn't work here. I would just go pick stocks and be worth millions of dollars, right? Like, yeah. So I don't know. There's always this moment in these charts where I just think it's like the hard questions are just completely punted on.
Yeah, and you know, just to underscore what you were saying there, Brandon. There's a lot of this, like a lot of that kind of like strategy, like, you know, canvases and workbooks you're supposed to do, and oftentimes I look at them and I think like, if I could fill out that worksheet or that canvas, I wouldn't need to fill it out. Right? Like if I could get all of that information and get decisions around it and actually know what to do, then I would be doing it. Like it would anyways. But so, you know, now Brandon, you I think every year, multiple times a year, you get recertified as a product manager from the Product Manager Certification Institute.
If only there was such a thing. That was
if we were to look at, I mean, does the notion of product manager productivity exist? Like,
well, that's what I was thinking. I think it probably, I mean, sure. I think we'd have to dig through. I think we'd find a lot of things right, but it would say stuff that, again, everyone knows, like, well, you should talk for customers and figure out what their problems are. And it's like, yeah. And then you should solve those problems in a way that's really compelling to them and that they want to buy. And it's like, well, yes, like I understand the questions, but like figuring that out. And this is sort of like writing a hit song kind of thing. It's like, it's always much more complicated. And it's like, to me, it's a lot of trial and error, which is like, nobody wants to hear that. There are people, and just like there's this productivity playbooks in development, there's like productivity playbooks in product management. It's like, okay, I went out and I did so many customer interviews, and then I documented that. And then I've, read up on a certain kinds of technology, and then I sized the market. And then I figured out where my competitive differentiation would be, right? And then if you did all of these things, boom, well, of course, every time you launched a new product or a new release, it would be successful. Of course, we know people do all these things and completely fail all the time. And then somebody out of nowhere builds something that nobody thinks has any use for anything, and then explodes onto the market as being very, very successful. And I think it's just the arbitrariness, I think, of product management is sort of more obvious, right? There is like, it's very hard to put metrics
That's
around
not going to
it.
stop McKinsey, though.
Yeah, no, I think it would be stuff around customer interviews and market size.
Yeah, I mean, they're like, here's how you're going to start, welcome to your new company, CEO. Here's how you're going to start measuring your product managers. Are they putting in enough customer interviews? Have they set out a roadmap with 3, 6, and 12-month horizons? If they're not doing that, let them go. Replace them with somebody from.
I think
from our
though, it's kind of one of the things, and it's true. It's like there isn't anything, kind of to Jason's original point. Like there is no like perfect background or like magic qualification to like be a product manager. And I think the reason less of these reports I think are compelling to executives is that those executives kind of feel like they could just do it themselves. They're just like, because like anyone that's worked in product management has walked in after doing a lot of work on a roadmap and just had some executive be like, no, that's not right. Like I just like whatever. It could be anything. It could be like, I just talked to so-and-so and we're going to do this next. Or like, I was just using the product in that color blue. It's a little too aggressive. I think it needs to be, I was thinking a darker, and it's just like, because it is true though. It's like everyone can have an opinion. Like there isn't an objective way. Whereas an executive is much less likely to walk in and be like, oh, what kind of sorting algorithm are you using
exactly.
here? Like, and use this other sorting.
That's why they need McKinsey to tell them that those developers are screwing around.
That's right. It is true.
Product managers, they can tell. They're like, Brandon,
absolutely.
I don't like that blue. You clearly don't know how to do your job. Whereas a developer, they're like, have you tried a bubble sort? That's just not going to fly.
That would be fantastic if some of the management consulting firms were like algorithms. Let's go over them.
I was gonna say, but like to kind of maybe like dovetail all of, or just tie this all together. It's like, but to me, it's like it's okay. Like when you walk into the room of the executives, it's like if it's a zero-sum game where if they move something on the chart and I feel like I've lost the whole thing, you've lost, everything's losing. Whereas if we're like, hey, this is what I'm thinking, right? And like if we just walk in and we say the engineering team generally delivers what we want, what we specify on a predictable time frame, and it's pretty frequent. Like that's kind of like all we like. If we got that in the engineering team, check, right? Like I think like I'm not going to worry about that. Okay, now let's look at this list. Like, what do you think it should be? What do I think it should be? What is our hunches? Where do we think we maybe don't have enough information, or where do we just need to make some bets? And it's like, okay, because at that point, if you're just sort of negotiating around, like, well, I think export CSV, even though it's not important. You don't think it's important? I think it's going to be a huge winner. And another person says, no. Dashboards are going to be a huge winner, right? And it's like, okay, well, let's just kind of figure out what makes the most sense. And then let's just learn from it and not treat it as a zero-sum game. Like you as a product manager, I'm not going to come fire you because you pushed the feature that was wrong when you had limited information. Or if that's the case of what it is, then you're just going to see a lot of churn in the executive and product ranks, which is very, very common.
Yeah. Well, I think when I was reading through this, I think the kind of summary that I wrote in my head and into the web browser, which I emailed out in my newsletter. If you want my gripping analysis of this whole thing, if you go to newsletter.cote.io, you can subscribe. And if you're writing comments to us as we record this, or you're listening to it, you certainly will enjoy the newsletter. If you go to newsletter.cote.io, there's my plugging. You got to do that. I think BCG would say that's important if you want to be a rising star instead of a dog. And so I think that it's almost like if you're not having good outputs, if the company's not making money, then you want to like figure out what to do to improve. How do you figure out what to do to improve? If you don't know how software is done, you're kind of flying blind. So you start to like gather some metrics, and you're going to like sort those metrics and try to like identify stuff. And you know, probably the whole flaw in this thinking is that like, I know if I get rid of people, that will fix my problems, right? which will just sort of like optimize costs, you know, or it wouldn't even optimize, it just will reduce your costs. Or if I find the people who aren't performing well, I can get rid of them, so forth and so on. But I think the core issue is that like, if you can't really determine what value your application developers are bringing, then you should fix that problem or not care, right? Like, figure out like what's going wrong otherwise. But like, maybe the issue is like this level of detail of tracking an individual's sort of productivity. I don't know, even a team productivity that gets complicated. If like, you know, if you're supporting some complicated banking application that's composed of the effort of like 50 teams, how is that different, right? Like it's difficult to track that stuff as well. But yeah, it's just a magic box, and it's hard to diagnose. However, I'll just note this: it's if you go look at that guy Dan North's post, he does have a actual like, it's almost like, here's the secret of how to evaluate individual developer productivity, which don't tell management because they'll just fuck it up. Like, don't give it to them. But as he goes over and thinking through this, I haven't developed in a long time, but it seems true. He says, well, the way you measure individual performance is you ask the other people in the team what they think of that person.
Yep.
Because everyone else in the team will know if they are,
everybody knows,
if they're pulling their weight, if they're delivering on their potential, if they just need help, if you've already given them help and they're like giving up. Like the teammates will know if that person like needs to be helped, dealt with, is great, or is just fine. And if you ask them, they will tell you, which is almost, that makes sense. But I don't know if you can operationalize that. But then it kind of comes with the thing of like, and by the way, don't tell anyone. It's almost like a mob mentality of like, we all know what's going on here, but you never go outside of the family.
The omerta for developers.
I do think, you know, slightly related to this is sort of like the other side of this whole coin. I thought this this recent news out of Unity, so Unity being one of the most popular, I guess, gaming engines, they basically fired their CEO this week. And I think this is kind of back to like an interesting question about like, what are the most important problems? So it's like, I have no idea if the Unity developers are productive or not. I hear good things about Unity, so I assume it will be. But in this case, the CEO, you know, went out and decided to change the licensing model of Unity and basically go from a one-time fee to a reoccurring fee, which was uniformly hated by all of the customers. He even went on to call the developers, I think he said some disparaging comments. I won't repeat exactly what they were here. And then ultimately got himself fired. So I thought this was just like interesting, a callback to like, I don't know, Cote, maybe something you had, developers are the new kingmakers way back in the Redbunk days. I just thought this was a good example of like, well, here's a specific example of where the developers actually did dethrone the king quite unceremoniously. And so he's gone.
Yeah. Well, to be clear, that was Stephen O'Grady, who was the kingmaker guy, which I saw last week at the Monktoberfest in Maine, Portland, Maine. Yes. I mixed up those states earlier today, so I've got it mixed up in my head. But yeah, I mean, that is, I don't know the Unity stuff well enough, but it does seem like, it sounds like one of those things where management misunderstood who the important stakeholders and parties were in what they were doing, right? Like one of the, you know, if you have like a if you haven't forced yourself to read through like, you know, super boring Michael Porter strategy foundational stuff, just like, I mean, anyone who's ever read you know, Adam Smith, seems really boring, but like one of the things that people often miss out as part of your strategy is taking into account your suppliers and your partners, right? Like, and the channel, like they have a huge role in your strategy. So like in a lot of these kind of like, and not in the cloud native sense of it or developer sense, in a lot of these like platformy businesses, it turns out your developers or the people who are writing software that gets sold through your system are incredibly important, and you can't fuck with them.
Yeah, and I do think it's just an interesting it's a good example of like, here's a place where it did backfire, right? Whereas I think the other places where we've talked about a lot, like HashiCorp and Reddit, right, where there was like, hey, they made these huge changes, a lot of developers don't like it. So far, there haven't been any like this. There haven't been kind of an executive or strategy reentrenchment to this level. I guess no, I take it back. Who was it? Docker? Who was the one that like changed their mind on? Was it Docker Hub? I'm trying to think of like they announced it and then they immediately
but I think everyone had already kind of started fleeing.
Yeah, so that was maybe like that's an example of, I guess, someone actually, it wasn't to the level of like someone got fired that I know of, but like, so it's just kind of interesting to track these things. It's like, okay, in this case, it was maybe the biggest penalty you could do for management. In a bunch of other cases, like to be decided if anything comes of it.
But I mean, the rationale given in the article, how true or not it is he kind of unilaterally decided to do this and was very antagonistic in his approach towards the help, the developers. And so clearly, I mean, reading through it, like Unity's always lost money, and so clearly they needed to do something. And so this executive decided, well, here's what we're going to do. Whether or not that was well thought out, whether or not he actually implemented it all on his own, he definitely took the fall. But something has to be done, I guess. So whoever, Jim Whitehurst from Red Hat has taken over temporarily, but whoever comes in will have to like make everyone happy again. But also still has to figure out how to make money.
Yeah, and so maybe you're right. That we'll have to keep an eye on this one because it does seem like with the background of Whitehurst and Red Hat, and like he certainly has navigated these waters before. So we'll have to see. Maybe he comes in and, if you will, as the white knight, gets him back on track, proposes something just slightly less onerous, but is maybe maybe it's viewed as good, and he can be like, "Yep, I'm going to leave now, and I'll take another huge check."
Yeah, the board meeting before the announcement was, okay, you want to retire when? Check it out. Here's what we need you to do. Go throw a bunch of hand grenades. You jump out on them. Don't worry. Your retirement's already sorted.
Yeah, sure. No, you're right. I mean, obviously he's going to do.
We need to do this.
He did just fine, but it's
the
just
strategic.
You rarely see
retirement.
Retired effective immediately. You just don't normally see that. So it'll be a fun one to watch, I think, for sure.
Now that guy is going to mess up my bubble chart because wasn't he the CEO of Delta before he was the CEO of Red Hat?
Something like that, yeah.
Hence being in Atlanta. I could go look this up, but that's terrible podcasting. But like he goes from the airline industry to the open source enterprise infrastructure industry. And by the numbers, does great, right? Like I think Red Hat had a good exit. Everything was great.
Red Hat to IBM is a career,
and then he's going to go work. It's software, but it's also like
he's an advisor for Silver Lake. Yeah,
it's only the interim, though. Remember, so he probably
fair enough.
Yeah, one of their investors said, "Hey,
even the Unity thing aside, so this guy is he's going to be the weird outlier on my chart because he went from Delta to Red Hat.
I mean, reportedly, Red Hat was always heavily engineer driven, and they had a product that like just kind of sold itself, kind of like Google Ads, like whatever anything else does, like people are going to keep buying those ads no matter how many.
I feel like, I mean, Matt, I love your opinion here because I think a bunch of people there. I feel like people at Red Hat generally like spoke pretty highly of him. Like I feel like
but I think it's because he didn't ruffle feathers. I think because he probably, this is the sign of the good manager, and the things that like those executives going from military to Alcoa to wherever could sort out. I was like, a lot of these things are 80% the same. You're going to have a management structure. You're going to have sales, marketing, manufacturing, or engineering, as we like to call it. And if you can keep that org chart happy, if you can get everyone to excel in what they're supposed to be doing, that's the key to a good manager, right? And whether the domain, may or may not matter. I mean, Delta to Red Hat, that's a bit of a change, right? So maybe Whitehurst popped in. And he's like, okay, we have a product that is very compelling. I need to keep engineering happy. What do I need to do that? Boom. Okay. Salespeople need to be able to sell it. What do I need to do to keep them happy? They need something from engineering. What does product management need to give to make them both happy? Okay. Maybe he's just a good manager without having to be the master of the domain.
Right. Well, also too, remember, and this is back to like the whole when Red Hat truly was, open source to the core. So like he somehow during his tenure, he seemed to keep everyone pretty happy, or at least there wasn't. I'm sure there were plenty of like disagreements, but
and it's the halo effect, right? Success breeds success. Yeah,
well, he did roll
of course he was a good manager. Red Hat made a lot of money.
True, that's right. Success is what would you say? It's winning. I think I didn't want to correct you at the time, Coach. I think it's winning is the best deodorant.
Oh yes,
the classic sports quote. So
is that a Ditka or something?
Maybe he can. He'll win again at Unity. It'd be fun for us to watch.
Yeah. Huh. Well, I think we've sorted a lot of things out here. We figured out developer productivity, magical, hard to measure. You should know what you're measuring. Maybe that's what it is. I think the lesson we've learned here is understand what you're measuring, and then it'll work out. If you don't understand what you're measuring, you're just going to get measurements. That's the that's the problem. Well, speaking of just getting measurements and not understanding what's happening, do we have any bureaucracy this episode, Brandon?
We have several things I want to hit on today. One, I sent stickers to Torsten in Germany. If you'd like a sticker, just send your postal address to stickers@softwaredefinedtalk.com, and I will be happy to send you a sticker anywhere in the world. A couple of jobs. Tim wants you to work over at Biogen. They're hiring a senior manager, solution architecture, global, commercial, and medical IT. So I don't know if that job sounds exciting to you. Go into the jobs channel and find Tim. Also, speaking of Red Hat, our friend Brian, our friend over at Red Hat, looks like they're hiring a principal product marketing manager for OpenShift. Excuse me, OpenShift, and that is a remote available position. So you should definitely check that one out. And then other thing, last week I wanted to quickly follow up on. So last week, Matt and I talked a lot about the wireless emergency alerts. So I learned a bunch of things about this. So I was under the impression it was just a text message, but no, not at all. I was completely wrong. It is an entire whole separate system. It was built as part of the Warning Alert and Response Network Act in 2008. So basically they started in 2008. Took them 4 years to build it. Your wireless companies, they all volunteer to be a part of it. And then as you probably, at least here in the United States, if you actually got the notification, you realized it wasn't a text message. It's like, at least on Apple, it's a little pop-up and it plays that crazy emergency sound. So yeah, it's like its own little network here. So Matt, and I think you and I were guessing at how much it cost. I think it costs a lot more money. And finally, I asked you, Matt, I was like, did you get it? And you're like, no, you didn't. Well, it turns out it's all about geofencing. So if you were not, I guess, in an American border with a participating cell tower, then of course you didn't get it because you're in Australia and everything's good. So interesting to learn about the WEA.
I forget which day it was, if it was later in the week or earlier, but I was in the States sitting on a plane, either going or leaving the Monktoberfest there. And yeah, it went off at that time, which was like I was ready for there just to be like chaos and Mad Max shit on the airplane, but everyone was fine.
Nothing happened, which is always always great when everyone prepares and nothing happens. We all learn the wrong lesson. So
yeah, we need one of them libertarian economist people to study this like warning network system and be like, well, it's probably a good idea that it exists. And how did this funding and authorization go through in the US government? Is it like this vital service was so boring and incomprehensible by like the US Senate that they just sort of like signed it off and everything was fine? Or was it done through a executive agency and so therefore no one was paying attention? Or what? Like, how did this nationwide thing that affects everyone, that like is intended to be there to improve the quality of life, like get through with obviously with a strong partnership with multiple industries across cell phones, software companies, carriers, regional people feeding into it? It's almost like in an extremely boring way, just like the American bureaucracy dream.
Yeah,
you can make it happen.
A couple things. I actually looked up the bill because I was curious like how much like money was allocated. I couldn't find out that, because listen, I'm not a Vox reporter, so I don't know where that information's hidden. But I actually looked at the whole thing. I was actually, this is actually pretty well written. I was like, wow, like, I mean, because you go through it and it kind of outlines the requirements. I was like, because they wrote in a way that was sort of generic enough that people could do it. Also, because it's United States, there was a lot of like optional and opting in. So I think to my knowledge, like AT&T, Verizon, and T-Mobile, they're like by far and away the three biggest. Like from what I can tell, they all opted in. There wasn't any issues. But it just like everything goes a lot easier if you just say like opt in.
That's true.
Because I think if they said something like you have to do it, then there'd be like a lot of protests. And so looking at the whole bill, I was like, you're right. I was like, this is a pretty good example. And then final little fun fact I learned was like, it's actually used quite a bit. It's just not nationwide. Like if you've ever gotten like an Amber Alert or a local weather, like severe weather alert, so it's been used, I don't know, like 100,000 times. So it actually gets used quite a bit. And I was like, oh, so it's like, the whole thing, like kind of like, this is the moment where you kind of feel you leave government. You're like, government can work. I think things are going to be okay. Right now, I know next week I'll be like a TSA or something will be wrong. I'll be like, I'm out again. Government just cannot work. But this week after the whole WEA, I was like, it worked. It was good. So good job, U.S. government on this one.
Yeah. So I guess what you're saying is what they were really testing is that when you send an email to 300 people, that all 300 of them take action based on it and push the button to send the alert out. It's probably not that ridiculous. Well, there's several conferences coming up. Speaking of alerts. Next week online, we have our Spring One tour on October 17th. I'll be speaking there along with several of my coworkers. We got lots of talks running in parallel. And then also I have a series of talks. Yes, they're webinars, if you prefer that word. October 17th to 24th that you can check out. If you go to softwaredefinedtalk.com/436, which is really close, sort of, to 486, which will be fun when we have that number. We'll have to press the turbo button so we can get there quicker. Or was that 386s that had a turbo button?
I think they both did.
Either one.
The good ones.
Also, KubeCon North America is coming up November 6th to 9th. And I discovered that we at VMware have a 20% off discount code that you can use.
Whoa.
Now, as a joke, I'm going to read the discount code off, but so get your pencil out.
Oh, geez.
But remember, if you want to know this 20% discount code, really just go to softwaredefinedtalk.com/436. It is all in capitals, KCNA23VMWE020. And I think that's actually the letter O followed by 2 and 0.
Copy paste.
So hopefully you got that correct.
Okay, I want you to like go learn how this code came into existence and like why it had to be that. That is really what I wanted to know.
Yeah, I think the mystery is that EO, because we know KubeCon North America 2023 VMware. Well, VMW is the stock thing, right? So
EO,
VMware. But what is the EO? We know what 20 is. That's 20% off. Okay. But EO,
EO. That's probably like, are they trying to like was it a code just for you or for anyone?
No, this is just for anyone. And I verified with the person who sent it to me. I was like, is this general use or just like special people? And
they were like,
Europe,
no, right?
Use it everywhere.
Right? Europe?
No, but this is North America.
North America. I don't know. All right,
I'm telling you, it's a mystery.
Let's get to it.
Maybe Chris can find out for us and write us in Slack. And, that's a good use of the CTO time. And then we also have VMware Barcelona coming up, which I'll be at November 6th and 9th. VMware Explorer Barcelona. And the Risk V or 5 Summit is November 7th to 8th.
Whoa.
And the goal is to get Matt Ray there. And Matt, I think I learned
at the same time as KubeCon.
Matt, I if I was not incorrect in looking at my LinkedIn profile updates, like I think you have a coworker that's going to this.
I do.
So
Carl, yeah,
Matt, this seems, I don't know. I'm sure that person is very good and very skilled, but like you have to be the right person to go from your company to the Risk V. There's no way he is more passionate about it than you.
He is, because he's going on his own dime.
Really?
Oh,
wow. Okay. All right. Well, have him report in. Maybe we'll have to do some type of live reporting in on what's going on with at the Risk conference.
Exactly.
And then finally, January 29th to February 1st is that conference in Texas. Now, if you have a conference you want to mention, you should contact us. And we have all sorts of ideas for media sponsorships about things there. For example, if the Risk 5 or V Summit, instead of us just mentioning it because 2 of the 3 hosts on this podcast love chips for some reason, like if they were to sponsor us, maybe they could charter a jet for Matt Ray so he could go from Chicago to this Risk conference to participate in one of his passionate realms, Risk microprocessors.
You know it.
Anyhow, well, speaking of private jets and Risk microprocessors, Matt Ray, what do you have to recommend this episode?
My recommendation is a little, I think it's an independent game I played for a little bit called Homeseek. It's essentially, as my son said, isn't that just SimCity, but you need water? So yeah, it's a post-apocalyptic SimCity. It's kind of fun. It's got a narration thing over the top of it, little storyline going, but yeah, I think it's on sale on Steam, so check it out. It's pretty fun.
How about yourself, Brandon?
All right. Well, my recommendation here is just the Mac OS Sonoma. So I upgraded, and I think everything's just fine. It's great. The features I like the most after all the work that the Mac OS team did is I like the new backgrounds. I really do. I like the landscape.
Are they blue?
You get the nice, if you will. I have to look at. I wonder if I could try to make one of my virtual backgrounds. But you get this nice whatever you call them, landscapes that were only available on the Apple TV. And then I just like the autocorrect seems better. That seems really good. So the other thing that everyone talks about is the widgets. But I've given up on widgets on a computer. I don't need them. I'm not a widget person. So I guess that's the thing. Maybe that's kind of like an email inbox kind of question. Are you a zero email inbox person, or do you have 10,000 messages in it? So I don't like any widgets, and I don't like having a lot of extraneous email in my inbox. So, take that for what it's worth. So yeah, Mac OS, in 2 years, Matt will upgrade to Sonoma, and he'll
I'm waiting for the point release. I just needed to.
But I'm fine. I'm all in. It was no big deal. All my audio software, which is the only thing I ever worry about, worked just fine. So dive in. Don't be afraid.
I'm waiting for point 1.
I think we have some sort of a desktop management thing that's preventing me from upgrading or something. I don't really know.
There's that too.
Yeah. I'm with you on the widgets thing. I think I could see a widget of a baby monitor camera would be nice, but that could also just be a modal window. I don't know. I think maybe kids like widgets, and as you get older, you're I got too much shit going on in my life.
Yeah,
I don't need more input.
I just need full screen
widgets
apps.
Have been implemented, I would say 5 million times. I was trying to think the first time I saw it was a Yahoo. There was a Yahoo dashboard of widgets, and it's
yeah.
I do think on the iPhone now, on the iPhone, having some nice widgets, it is kind of nice because you have less
That's
options.
True.
So if you just say fine, widgets were kind of thrown into Mac OS because they had to put them on iOS. It's great, but when you're at your computer, I just there's no you have all the stuff you need already. You don't need widgets, I think. So
yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. The only thing getting close to it is maybe my calendar app. I could kind of, I don't know. But that's the only thing that I kind of look at as a dashboard to see what's going on. But I probably would have figured.
That's why I have 2 monitors.
I know. I was going to say I've got 3 monitors. If I needed that, I would have figured it out.
Exactly.
Yeah. Fuck those widgets. I think that's the official software defined talk policy position. Well, in a much more gentler way. Well, sort of, because there's hella killing and gut spilling. But my recommendation is the sequel to the book Hild came out. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right because I don't know how they talked in the 600s up in the not United Kingdom at the time. But it's called Meanwood. And it's great if you like the Hild book, which is about I forget what her full name is, but it's like a fictionalization of Saint Hild of the 600s. and which is what Hild was about. But this is kind of like, well, the sequel. But it's like what happens after she kind of like becomes, I don't know, gets her own land and becomes a lady or whatever. And I was reading it, and it's like 900 pages. And I think this is it's kind of it's getting close to being kind of Dune-ish. So I'll see if it gets over that hump, or if it becomes just sort of like a very well-written transcript of a diplomacy game, which I guess some people would like that. But so far, it's great. So I recommend it. And then also, it's not really a recommendation, but earlier this week, I reached over 700 subscribers to my newsletter, available at newsletter.cote.io if you want to subscribe. So thanks to everyone who subscribes. I know our download numbers for this podcast, and they are much higher than 700. So if you listen this far, you should subscribe to my newsletter, because it's pretty much the same thing, except it won't hurt your ears.
One's got more talking.
Yes, that's right. One has multiple perspectives, the other has one. And that goes on and on. Well, speaking of multiple perspectives, you've just heard 3 of them, and maybe we've synthesized other perspectives to try to be more than 3 perspective-ish, if that's a term.
By multitudes.
That's right. By listening to Software Defined Talk, available at softwaredefinedtalk.com. If you're not subscribed to it already, thanks for listening. You should subscribe to it yourself. Grab all the devices you can that can subscribe to a podcast, and do it. Maybe the Amazon person's delivering something, or you're receiving groceries from Jumbo or Albert Heijn, and you could say like, "Hey, could I borrow your phone real quick?" and just subscribe it to Software Defined Talk. I'm sure they'll thank you.
Just those numbers.
But if you want to get links to everything we mentioned, those conferences, that fantastic code KCNA23VMWEO20. To get 20% off attending KubeCon, you can go to softwaredefinedtalk.com/436. And, I understand that the 46 did have a turbo button, which this episode does not have, but soon will. Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right. Well done. Well done, Cote, as always. Good to see who showed up. Is it Deshaun? Good to see Deshaun, and good to see.
He's my coworker.
Is he? Okay. I wasn't sure if all right. Well, maybe so can he figure out the why there's an EO in the
oh, maybe.
code?
Yeah. That's not really his
a real
department
test.
either.
Like, does anyone from VMware I guess it would be demand generation? Does anyone actually I don't know exactly which group it would be. Campaign management? Does anyone
I think it would be in the event marketing group. Is that who does that?
Event marketing. So like we're really testing event
or
marketing.
is it just the software spits it out?
No, I don't believe that is.
I think we'd have to go
pick
to
your
the
own code. I think the software spits it out.
I think we'd have to ask the Linux Foundation people, because I'm guessing there wasn't a lot of back and forth about the code.
Could you put our stock price in there, or
because really, I mean, you just would make the code VMware, right?
Yeah.
Well, like you do VMware 20 or something. I just like, I think that's pretty common.
I like it when they put the amount discount in there, because of course the first thing any right-minded person would do is they go in and they would put EO 50, EO 80, EO employee, right? Like you just would go through all the variations, But
all right, Matt, how's this? I changed the background. Better or worse?
Oh,
too aggressive?
Does it have a gradient? I'm
Yeah.
liking it. I appreciate a good gradient.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are you like, how about this? You like this one? Is this
Whoa.
one? Is that a little too
No, I like the gradient blue better. That one, I don't know.
patchy blue?
Ooh, yeah.
No.
See, this is why it takes so long. What? This is just books. No one likes that.
No. It looks like you're sitting in the bookcase. That
Whoa.
No.
Someone
Right.
spent a lot of time at IKEA on those computers.
All right. I don't know. There's
I
only,
like that one. That's
there's only a
great.
few million messages or backgrounds on the internet, so I'll spend. Although maybe I will get one of these Apple ones. I'll probably break the computer though. It's too high res. It's too good. So
sounds good.
I could just send you a close up of my face.
that would be awesome. I could have you right behind me and Matt right. That would even be funnier. That would be.
Or just like forehead.
Like that. Remember that game? You Don't Know Jack? There was like the little forehead of the Jack guy.
Exactly.
That game was so much fun.
Maybe I just need to like work on maybe I just need to clean up the background like you've done here, Cote. I like your little subtle LED lights. So
I just need to make the bed.
That's right. Just make the bed. There's a good title too. Just make. We had a lot of good titles in this week. All right. Anything else?
Maybe that's a quippy version of my complaint is like, I would be making the bed every morning if I had a fucking bed. Like that's.
I think I understand what you're measuring, or you'll just get measurements.
What's the best title? Maybe we should pick them out. Like which one you guys want to use?
Oh, we didn't talk about the SBF stuff. We'll have to save that for next time. I want to know that.
Can I put them all in the Slack? Not Slack. Here, let's see if we can do some real-time audience feedback. Here are all the proposed titles from today's show.
They're gonna pick the discount code.
All right.
Either that or candy corn.
No.
That's
out of my way, Costco. I'm going direct.
Really, all right.
So it doesn't support Markdown.
That's not good. I don't know. You have to kind of figure out. Okay, if there's a title in there you like, I think only Brian and I can't see. I'm not in the full Twitch. So if there's a specific title people like, they should put it in there. Otherwise, what do you like, Matt? Which is the one you like?
Well, the randomness of our titles calls out for out of my way, Costco. I'm going direct, but understand what you're measuring.
Mo developers, no problems is like that's from Slack, but I like that one. That was a good. I thought that's
from Slack. It's not from today.
I mean, I said it.
I
so
feel like
obviously
I feel like it's okay now. I feel like we can take inspiration from Slack. I don't know. What was yours, Cote? I'm sorry, I cut you off.
You know, the understand what you're measuring, or you'll just get measurements. That's descriptive.
Like that one? Okay.
Candy corn.
Candy corn. Have you tried a bubble sort?
All right. Well, thanks for everyone who streamed today. It was good having, I guess, one of Cote's coworkers on this week. And I guess tune in next week. Maybe we'll only do it for the streamers. If we find out why the code is actually the code, we'll announce it on the stream. That would be amazing. Really
We've given this much more thought than I ever wanted to.
That's what this is all about. So, all right. Goodbye to the streamers. Thanks for hanging out. We'll probably be back maybe next week around this time, hopefully. So,
stay jazzed.